Okay, Honorable Del Castillo.
We are in receipt of a letter coming from the mayor requesting for an authority to donate property of the city along Almeida, on the Almeida development site. But I want to manifest also, Madam Chair, that previously we have already requested that the development plan for the Almeida property be revised. Up to now, there is no submission. But with this request, I move that we include this in the calendar of business.
Under
Unfinished business.
unfinished business. Okay. Unfinished business. Next item,
The report of the Committee on Agriculture.
Committee on Appropriation.
Agriculture, yes.
Ay, Agriculture. Honorable Benafe.
Madam Chair, may I request for the acknowledgement of the Committee on Agriculture report?
Your report is acknowledged.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Committee on Agriculture conducted the committee hearing last January 26, and there was a quorum. There were 2 items that were taken up. The first business of the day is the endorsement dated December 2, 2022 of Ms. Maria Emily T. Galgal, the Independent Component City Agriculture and Fisheries Council Chairperson, an ordinance entitled An Ordinance Instituting and Implementing the Registration of Ownership of Agricultural and Fisheries Machinery and Equipment in accordance with the Joint Memorandum Circular number 2018-02 by the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Interior and Local Government relative to the national guidelines for the registration of ownership of agricultural and fisheries machineries and equipment within the territorial jurisdiction of Naga City. And may I proceed to the disposition, Madam Chair?
Proceed.
On motion of Honorable Salvador Del Castillo, seconded by Ms. Daisy Granada and Ms. Lisa Mapa, the committee resolved to recommend to the Sangguniang Panlungsod to pass an ordinance instituting and implementing the registration of ownership of agricultural and fisheries machinery and equipment in accordance with the Joint Memorandum Circular number 2018-02 by the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Interior and Local Government relative to the national guidelines for the registration of ownership of agricultural and fisheries machineries and equipment within the territorial jurisdiction of Naga City. And with this, may I request for presentation of the draft ordinance, Madam Chair.
You may proceed.
As a backgrounder, Republic Act number 10601, otherwise known as the Agricultural and Fisheries Modernization Law, mandates all owners of agricultural and fishery machinery and equipment to register their agricultural and fishery machinery and equipment with the agricultural offices of municipal and city governments for the purpose of establishing ownership and creating a national database for planning and monitoring purposes. Towards this end, the Department of Agriculture and the Department of the Interior and Local Government issued Joint Memorandum Circular number 2018-02, dated August 2, 2018, providing for the national guidelines on the registration of ownership of agricultural and fisheries machinery and equipment at the city and municipal levels. Hence, this ordinance aims to operationalize these national mandates in the city of Naga. In Section 1, title, this ordinance shall be known as the mandatory registration of ownership of agricultural and fisheries machinery and equipment in Naga City and providing penalties thereof. I would like to proceed to the scope, Madam Chair. The ordinance shall cover a one-time registration of ownership of both new and currently used agricultural and fisheries machinery and equipment owned by government entities, by farmers and private individuals, registered farmer cooperatives and farmer associations, and other private entities registered under the Securities and Exchange Commission, Department of Trade and Industry, Department of Labor and Employment, or the Cooperative Development Authority, which are used for crop, livestock, and fisheries production, harvesting, processing, storage, manufacture, preservation, transport, and distribution, research, extension, and instruction, including those listed in Annex A hereof. There is a long list in the Annex, Madam Chair. This ordinance also features the Registry of Agricultural and Fisheries Machinery and Equipment, and the guidelines are set forth. In Section 4, we have the registration of agricultural and fisheries machinery and equipment, presently registered by other concerned national government agencies. Section 5 presents the general guidelines for the issuance of certificate of agricultural and fisheries machinery and equipment registration. So enumerated here are the guidelines regarding the registration of equipment. In Section 6, the procedure in case of amendment to the CAPMER. A certificate of clearance and a new CAPMER shall be prepared by the City Agriculture Office for approval of the Office of the City Mayor in the following instances: transfer of ownership of the machinery or equipment. The original CAPMER and certificate of clearance shall be required in the application for an amended CAPMER. And the transfer of location to another local government unit. A new registration form shall be secured, which shall be approved by the local government where the owner is transferred, or where the owner transferred. Section 7 presents the payments for the registration. Section 8, I'd like to read this highlight. The incentives. Owners of registered machineries and equipment shall be eligible to the following incentives. Letter A, insurance coverage for registered equipment and machineries, subject to the guidelines and application procedures of the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation, or PCIC, for the insurance of non-crop agricultural assets. Only machineries and equipment owned by farmers registered with the registry system for basic sectors in agriculture are entitled to this incentive. The City Agriculture Office shall facilitate the insurance coverage of RSBSA registered farmers with PCIC. Letter B, under incentives, priority recipient for fuel and other subsidies for RSBSA registered owners of farm equipment granted under the various farm support programs of the Department of Agriculture, subject to its hectareage prioritization. Letter C, use of registered equipment as loan collateral for city government credit windows. Letter D, priority and free labor servicing by the Common Service Facility for Agriculture Machineries and Equipment once the city government operates said Common Service Facility. And letter E, such other incentives as may hereinafter be granted under programs or projects of the city government or the Department of Agriculture. The proposed ordinance also states the penalties for those who do not follow the ordinance and do not register their agriculture and fishery machinery. And there is an imposition of 1,000 peso fine per unit of unregistered machinery or equipment, and shall not be prioritized in programs and projects of the City Agriculture Office until said machineries or equipment are duly registered in accordance with this ordinance. Hence, there are prohibitions, especially in the transfer. Minsan pinapabakal si equipment. The sale of unregistered equipment is likewise being prohibited. Section 10, the public information campaign regarding this ordinance. There is a correction in Nadubli Section 10. Supposed to be Section 11, the effectivity. So this provides benefits for the farmers and fisheries folks because of the enumerated benefits in case they will register their machineries. We understand that some machineries are quite small, pareho ng mga water pumps, but then the advantage of this na nire-register because sometimes baka nawala yung kanilang machinery and being registered mas madali pag-trace ng mga authorities para ma-recover yung mga equipment, and that they can readily establish their ownership of the equipment. So that is the gist of this ordinance mandating the registration of ownership of agricultural and fisheries machinery and equipment in Naga City. And I so move for the approval on second reading of the presented ordinance, Madam Chair.
Okay, approved.
Thank you, Madam Chair,
Thank
colleagues.
you, Honorable Benafe. Honorable Del Rosario.
Kung mayo man, Madam Chair, objection, siguro we can approve this on third and final reading na. May observation na ako, Madam Chair, duman sa effectivity. We should also involve yung mga cooperatives sa mga farmers for easy information dissemination. And yung of course, yung CEPPIO will help in the campaign sa local media. Magayon ini, Madam Chair, na may incentives para igwa talagang kung ano man si mga maparehistro kan si mga agricultural implement. Massive information dissemination will be needed, Madam Chair. I suggest, Madam Chair, kung may man objection, we can approve this on third and final reading.
The Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is well taken and noted, and we will provide the appropriate corrections as manifested by Honorable Del Rosario. So I move for the approval on third and final reading of this proposed ordinance, Madam Chair.
Any second? And motion duly seconded. The resolution is approved. Next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank
Next
you.
item is the revised draft of the Naga City ASF ordinance proposed by the City Veterinary Office and Joint Memorandum Order Number 1, Series of 2022. May I proceed to the disposition, Madam Chair?
You may proceed.
On motion of Honorable Salvador del Castillo, seconded by Ms. Daisy Granada and Ms. Lisa Mapa, the committee resolved to recommend to the Sangguniang Panlungsod to pass an ordinance prescribing proper management, containment, and control of African swine fever in the city of Naga, imposing penalties for violations thereof and for other purposes, and appropriating funds therefore. At this point, Madam Chair, Honorable Vidal Castillo also manifested his personal objection regarding the ordinance. May I ask Honorable Vidal Castillo if he would like me to proceed with the reading of his declaration of objection. So, I'd like to read Honorable Vidal Castillo's objection. He placed it on record, his personal objection regarding this ordinance, saying that ASF is coming from heaven, and even in Africa, where this source came from, until now there is no vaccine yet for ASF. He further stated that the Bible says that if a pig die, no person shall touch or eat its meat, because it is a sin to eat its meat. Unquote. At this point, Madam Chair, may I present the proposed ordinance. An ordinance prescribing proper management, containment, and control of African swine fever in the city of Naga, imposing penalties for violations thereof, appropriating funds therefore, and for other purposes. I would like to read the whereases. Whereas Section 16 of the Local Government Code states that every local government unit shall exercise the powers expressly granted, those necessarily implied therefrom, as well as powers necessary, appropriate, or incidental for its efficient and effective governance, and those which are essential to the promotion of the general welfare. Whereas Section 468, Paragraph 4, Number 5, Section 458, Paragraph 5, Number 12, and Section 447, Paragraph 5, Number 12 of the Local Government Code authorizes the Sangguniang Panlalawigan, Panlungsod, Bayan, to approve measures and adopt quarantine regulations to prevent the introduction and spread of diseases within its territorial jurisdiction. Whereas African swine fever, or ASF, a high-impact transboundary animal disease, continues to affect the swine production sector of the Philippines with no vaccine and no known cure to date, resulting in the industry estimate of 36% reduction of national swine inventory, impacting both on livelihood and agricultural economy. Whereas the Department of Agriculture issued DA Administrative Order Number 7, Series of 2021, or the implementing guidelines for Bantay ASF sa Barangay program to empower local government officials including those in the barangays, in their roles in the disease control programs of the government at the grassroots level for timely detection, management, and control, and prevention of spread of any diseases, particularly the ASF. Whereas the local government of Naga City, through the City Veterinary Office and other concerned departments and stakeholders, collaborates with the Department of Agriculture, with its concerned agencies, and adopts the Bantay ASF sa Barangay program as it strives to manage, contain, control, and prevent the spread of ASF, and facilitate the recovery of the swine industry in the city. Now therefore be it ordained by the Sangguniang Panlungsod at the City of Naga that Section 1, for brevity, this ordinance shall be known as the ASF Ordinance of Naga City. And may I state the purpose? This ordinance shall provide policies and regulations geared toward prevention, management, and control of ASF by strengthening biosecurity measures at the farm level and border control, intensifying awareness campaigns and capacity building of stakeholders, authorizing the use of resources for the effective implementation of this ordinance, as well as in mitigating the adverse impact on the affected stakeholders by, among others, indemnifying them in the event of depopulation or stamping out of affected or exposed pigs. A task force will likewise be created that shall be primarily responsible in the enforcement of this ASF ordinance and other related laws applicable. So we have also the coverage which covers all barangays within Naga City. We have the definition of terms, and in Section 5 we have the prohibited acts during the existence of ASF. And I'd like to present one by one the prohibited acts. Section 5.1, no person shall move pigs from sources affected by ASF without accompanying necessary permit or document. Section 5.2, no person shall be allowed to transport pigs, pork products, and byproducts, uncooked, cooked, processed, and raw without accompanying necessary permit or document. Section 5.3, no person or any entity is allowed to transport swill, pig manure, and the like. Section 5.4, no person shall tamper or falsely or falsify documents such as, but not limited to, number 1, veterinary health certificate, number 2, shipping permit, number 3, laboratory test results for ASF, and number 4, license to operate or certificate of meat inspection. Number 5.5, no person, entity shall remove deceased animals from quarantine areas. Section 5.6, no person or entity shall unduly interfere with authorities during enforcement. Section 5.7, no person shall refuse farm inspection and conduct of disease surveillance. And number 5.8, holding pens for pigs intended for slaughter is strictly prohibited. In Section 6, presented is the slaughtering regulations during the existence of ASF, and the provisions here states the requirements if the source is within Naga City, if the source is outside Naga City, and within Naga City there are fees required. Hello. 100 pesos to 300 pesos depending on the number of heads or the number of pigs that are submitted for health certificate application. So in number 6.3, regarding the entry at the Naga City District Abattoir. Hello. Entry to the Naga City District Abattoir will be denied if no proper documents are presented during the ante-mortem inspection. Section 7 also initiates the obligations of hog traders. In Section 8, the prescribed establishment of checkpoints during the outbreak of ASF, and this includes the biosecurity officers, the city veterinary office staff, policemen, barangay tanods, and public safety office personnel who are tasked to man the checkpoints. The documents to be presented by the shippers or the traders who are bringing live pigs and pork product are also enumerated here. Likewise, there is already instruction on the documents to be presented to get shipping permit from the Department of Agriculture, Field Office 5, that is situated in Pili, Camarines Sur. Section 9 presents the creation of the Naga City African Swine Fever Task Force, or ASF-TF. And it also states the functions of the task force. Section 9.1 enumerates the members of the task force, with the chairperson being the city mayor of Naga, and the vice chairperson is the head of city veterinary office, and with the following heads of departments and other members relevant to the enforcement of the city ordinance. The functions are also enumerated therein. Regarding training and capacity building for all concerned enforcers of this ordinance, there must be a capability building and training for the members of the task force as the identification of the disease, documentary requirements at the checkpoints, biosecurity, containment of the disease, proper disposal of confiscated and condemned pigs, to be conducted by the Quarantine Regulatory Services of Department of Agriculture Region 5 and City Veterinary Office. Also enumerated the provisions of this proposed ordinance are the specific tasks of the enforcers from the City Veterinary Office, the Market Supervisor, the Naga City Police Office, the Public Safety Office, the Liga President, the Barangay Captains, and appropriate. It is also stated here the task of the Liga President, the Barangay Captains, that is to provide appropriate barangay resolutions for the management and control during ASF outbreaks. Likewise, to help the other members of the task force. On Section 10, the declaration of the existence of African swine fever, and declaration of being ASF-free, Naga City. Upon confirmation of the Department of Agriculture, Regional Field Office, Field Unit 5, and with recommendation from the ASF Task Force, the city mayor shall issue an executive order on the existence of ASF within the city or nearby locations that warrants quick response due to the imminent danger that can be caused by the disease in the local swine industry. The city mayor shall likewise issue an order declaring the city as ASF-free once the Department of Agriculture confirmed that the disease ceased or was totally eradicated. Section 11, appropriation of fund and assistance to affected hog raisers. In the event of ASF outbreak in Naga City, whereby depopulation or stamping out of affected swine is conducted, an ASF Quick Response Fund shall be allocated out of the City Disaster Risk Reduction Management Office Fund to indemnify affected hog raisers. Indemnification assistance shall be provided to the affected hog raiser whose hogs were culled or depopulated, to wit, 1,000 pesos per suckling piglet. 2,000.
Honorable Benafe, was this presented to the committee members during the hearing?
Yes, Madam Chair, this was discussed.
And did you provide
thoroughly.
copies to the... Everybody read the ordinance already, so I don't think you can now move for the passage of the proposed ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With this having been approved in the committee level, may I now move for the approval on second reading of this proposed ordinance. An ordinance prescribing the proper management, containment, and control of African swine fever, or ASF, in the city of Naga, imposing penalties for violations thereof, appropriating funds therefore, and for other purposes. And I so move, Madam Chair.
Any second? Second. Comment, Honorable Rosales, or objection?
Chair. It's a matter of procedure, since both ordinances presented by the Honorable Benafe imposes fees. I'd like to ask if the requisite public hearing was already conducted for the ASF ordinance and the requirement on registration, since the imposition of fees will require the public hearing prior to enactment.
Honorable Benafe?
I concur to that manifestation, Madam Chair. We will be consulting again, although from what I know, the City Veterinary Office are already imposing fees every time they process the meat inspection.
So the
in
penalties
the
are already carried out by the office. So nag-ano na po sinda. That's being done by the City Agriculture Office.
Yes,
So-
Madam Chair, but we will need
Kailangan lang-
confirmation on this, and I will be confirming it again from our City Veterinary Office.
So Honorable Rosales, follow up.
So just to clarify, Madam Chair, I'm not objecting, but so that further or objections later on will not arise, I would
So you're
suggest
proposing
that
that-
the committee
yes.
conduct the public hearing
So before the approval,
for the final approval.
for the final approval.
The second reading, I am not objecting, Madam.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Rosales. Honorable Del Rosario?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also support this ordinance of the good councilor Benape. However, Madam Chair, I have some observations. in, I think, Section 9. Can we proceed to Section 9?
Section 9. Section 9.
Yeah. Yung functions.
Functions. Training capacity.
Yung functions, specifically yung sa Liga. 9.3, yan. 9.3.5. Liga President, Barangay Captains. Provide appropriate barangay resolutions for the management and control during ASF outbreaks. Gusto ko lang, Madam Chair, ma-clarify kung yung bang resolution na pigme-mention tayo sa proposed ordinance na ni, different from declaration kang city mayor na nasa ASF, ano kita, would the barangay still need to come up with a resolution sort of declaring, or baka po kaya mag-conflict ang dua baka po, or dahil po mag-action ng barangay, so city.
Thank you, Honorable Del Rosario. Actually, this will be based on the declaration of the mayor regarding the ASF or the presence of the ASF in our area or adjacent areas. Ang gustong sabihin ni Madam Chair is that this is to empower the barangays to provide also their own, to also act.
Their own measures and
They provide their own measures to control ASF in the area. Like for example, some of the barangays are conducting their own checkpoints also to prohibit, and they are also adopting certain biosecurity measures in order to preempt the spread of ASF in their locality. Likewise, they may also provide resolution authorizing some of their personnel to conduct monitoring in their own area. We will just clarify this, Madam Chair, and add the statement that this is in their providing biosecurity measures in their own barangay.
So there are suggestions from the members. So can we return it back to the proponent
Actually,
to conduct
dikit,
public
actually,
hearing?
Madam Chair,
Dikit na lang. Okay,
on
Honorable
my
Del
part, dikit
Rosario.
man lang ang ang observation ko.
Okay.
Ma-clarify lang yan na yan praise na yan, yung function ng barangay. Para at least sa pag-cascade sa barangay, malinaw sa inda kung ano ang gigipunda.
That is why the Honorable Venapuel will make the
Necessary
necessary,
adjustment. Okay. Last na lang, Madam Chair,
amendments.
yung source of fund, apunta ko lang si General Benapay kung I understand this will be charged sa disaster management fund.
Yes, sir.
Pwede niyo pa diyan? Pwede.
Okay. Ano siya?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Del Rosario. So we return this back to the proponent to make the corrections, the necessary corrections in the recommendation of the Honorable Rosales to conduct a public hearing with regards to the penalties imposed. We approve this in second reading, but he will have to submit the final next session.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank
you,
you,
Honorable
Honorable Rosales, Honorable Del Rosario. We will comply with the requirements, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Benafe.
Thank you. That ends my committee report.
Thank you, Honorable Benafe. Next item.
The recent inclusion under unfinished business, the letter dated January 31, 2023 of the Honorable City Mayor, or endorsed by the City Mayor, the request for authority for a deed of donation of a parcel of land for the construction of new CDA regional office.
Honorable Del Castillo.
Brought to us, this representation already requested that a revised development plan be submitted to us because previously we have approved the development plan in the area. Up to now, there is no submission. So with that, Madam Chair, in considering that in donation, the lot to be donated should be very specific. The location, the meets and bound. So in the absence of those matters, particularly the revised development plan, I believe that we cannot yet grant the authority being requested.
So we ask the CPDO.
Yes, Madam Chair. They should submit to us. Previously, the Sangguniang Panlungsod approved the development plan for the 3-hectare property. We cannot just
May ibang
make
naka-attach.
an inclusion or exclusion in the area without first submitting the revised development plan. Kung araw kaya mangyayari, para kipas ipag-approve sa tuya kan development plan.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Del Castillo. Honorable Rosales?
Yes, Madam Chair. I agree with the Honorable Del Castillo. Anyway, Madam Chair, may time pa man. February 9 po kaya the CTA Chairman will be coming for the signing of the deed of donation. We still have a session next Tuesday
Oo, iba pa.
before February 9. So we request that the CPDO submit to the Sangguniang before next session the revised site development plan. I understand, Madam Chair, that there's already an attached plan, but I guess the specific details would have to be included as suggested by the Honorable Del Castillo. Also attached with the request here, as earlier endorsed, is the draft deed of donation requested for authority by our City Mayor. So as compliance with the suggestion, Madam Chair, may we reiterate the request from the CPDO to submit the said revised plan.
Thank you, Honorable Rosales. The Secretary is so instructed to write the CPDO for the submission of the plan and also the other matters raised by the Honorable Rosales. Deferred. Next item.
The letter dated January 27, 2023 from Mr. Willie Prilles, endorsing the letter from Mr. Magadia on the proposed conduct of survey in Maryville Home Subdivision.
Is this pending with the Committee on Land Use, Honorable Del Castillo?
For the committee.
When
February
next?
8 at 1 o'clock. in the
February
afternoon. 8.
February 8. Secretary?
Second Wednesday of February.
Next item.
The letter dated January 27, 2023 from the Honorable City Mayor, submitting the compromise agreement between the city and certain property owners.
Committee on Housing.
Housing.
May compromise agreement and request for its ratification. Is there a need for an appropriation? Okay, Honorable Del Rosario.
Actually, ngunya ko lang nahiling, Madam Chair. Nasa third paragraph po. Hence, to formalize the settlement, the undersigned rights to respectfully submit to your good office the herein attached compromise agreement and request for its ratification. So, I think kung i-refer sa committee, it's the Committee on Appropriation, not Housing.
So, Committee on Appropriation.
Appropriation.
Okay, Honorable Del Castillo. Comment.
If we ratify this compromise agreement, there is an available fund which will cover the cost of the land being acquired by the city. We should be assured na igwa.
Okay, so referred to the Committee on Appropriation.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next item.
The technical evaluation from City Planning on the application
Land
for
use.
development permit.
Land use.
The revised ordinance, proposed ordinance mandating the utilization of renewable energy, such as solar power, providing guidelines for its implementation and for other purposes.
Honorable Del Rosario, this is your proposed Committee on Environment.
New business, copy of Barangay Ordinance number 2023-23 of Barangay Del Rosario, creating the Barangay Healthcare for HIV virus patients.
LO. Bako nasa ano yan? New business. New business, LO, laws and ordinances.
The
Next.
application for accreditation by Pamilyang Migrante Naga.
People empowerment.
The endorsement from the Budget Office forwarding the 2023 annual budget of
Committee
SK
on Appropriations.
of San Isidro. The proposed ordinance of Honorable Albios requiring food service industry to include 1/2 cup of cooked rice in their menu.
I think we already have on the previous, igwang, Mayo 10, may kind of find, because I think
Ayun pa yan, no?
a resolution na requiring all, so this will be on, Committee on, 1, laws and ordinances.
The proposed ordinance of Honorable Jesse R. Arbios establishing and institutionalizing the Abot Kayang Papustiso program.
Committee on laws and ordinances.
The proposed ordinance of Honorable Jesse R. Albios exempting all senior citizens in Naga from payment of initial rate for parking fees in establishment, malls, hospitals, and other similar places.
Laws and ordinances.
The letter dated January 23 from the Honorable City Mayor requesting for authority to negotiate with MNWD for the donation of a lot along Almeda Highway, a city property to be used for
City
the
properties.
proposed water production. The letter dated January 27 from Ms. Josephine Maglipon, event organizer, requesting for authority to utilize Abelia Street, Naga City People's Mall
February
for
1 to 28, ba gani? Committee on February 1, sa aga na. Sa aga na baga. Sa Committee on, market?
March. The letter dated, the letter of Johan Renzi Yao, Director Lauta Luas Incorporated.
Public
application for
utilities.
establishment of the proposed ordinance of Honorable Silito S. El Rosario, Honorable Gomez, and Honorable Benafi requiring the registration of e-bikes,
Laws and
providing guidelines
ordinances.
for its implementation. The endorsement from the City Mayor's Office dated January 30, 2023, endorsing the request of Punong Barangay Jose Perez, the change of 3 units.
Transport.
Right. The technical evaluation report from the city planning on the application of
Committee on land use.
land use. Other matters, the status report of various infra projects for the month of January 2023 by the DPWH's 3rd District Engineering Office.
Noted.
The notice of hearing from the National Water Resources Board.
Noted.
The
Next.
invitation to PCSO and PNP during the next session.
Next regular session. The Secretary is instructed.
Unfinished business.
Under unfinished business. Honorable Del Castillo.
We should invite, Madam Chair, the City Director of the Philippine National Police and the Provincial Manager of the PCSO so that they can shed light on the reports that the collection of steel in Naga is rampant. So we should know from the horse's mouth if that report is really true. We should confine ourselves on those two officials of the government. Councilor Lito will add two more persons, Madam Chair. Kung pili daan si Kapitan Alan, ta sa Balatas ang gulping tarayaan,
And Danilo,
pati na si Danilo Depositario. Pero mga pribadong tao kaya ni Madam Chair. Siguro si Kapitan Alan pwede. But si Danilo Depositario is a private person. Mayo man kita ning jurisdiction over him. Oh, siguro pwede man imbitaran siguro, Madam Chair.
Si sa imbitaran, si Kapitan Alan.
Kapitan Alan San Juan.
O, dahil na itong Danilo Depositario. Si sa ini? Si sa ining Danilo. Private, individual. So, dahil siya imbitaran. Si lang, si Tulo lang. So, approve. Next.
Nominal voting,
Honorable Del Castillo.
1205.
Pair all approve resolutions and ordinances to nominal voting and move for its approval.
Any second? Approve. Next item.
Move to adjourn, Madam Chair.
Any second for the adjournment? The session is now adjourned. Alas 12.